Working on the green leaf drawing from folder 2, you can see that I've brought in the go by, the little graphic from our website. For instructions on that, you look at a earlier movie. I've got myself over here on the green leaf layer, and I've got myself on the green leaf artboard, so I'm trying to keep all that straight as I go. To help me, I lock everything else. Now remember, there is a kind of a simple way to lock those quickly, is to press Option and click, and it locks everything except the layer that you're working on. Okay, nice little shortcut there. Okay, so here I am on my artboard, and to do this we practiced with using an ellipse to kind of get us started. And you may remember that along with the direct selection tool, A, and the pen, P, and just keeping it at that setting. Now whenever I press the command key, I've got the direct selection tool when I need it. I can fashion this into almost any shape that I want. And one thing that we talked about was using the pen tool with the Option key down to change this anchor point into a corner anchor instead of a curve. Right now it's a curve. Click once and now it's a corner. Press the command key and I can move that tip up so that it becomes that part of the leaf. Still with the command key down, I'm using my direct selection tool and moving these points around until I get a shape that looks a little bit more like the leaf shape that we're working with. You can see how the direct selection tool will fashion those handles into a way that sort of looks a little bit more like the leaf shape that we want. Now you can just continue to add stress to these handles and make the curves a little more specific. Remember, with the pen tool, if I let up with the command key, I can add additional anchor points should I feel that they're necessary. Maybe one here. Press the command key down, and now I'm able to get a little bit more of the heavier rounded shape there on the bottom. Okay, and all these can be readjusted and changed and made to work better as we try to establish that leaf shape. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out. Don't need to zoom out that far. See if I can get this to go here. That's what I'm looking for. And I'll just zoom in back in this way. Okay, so now you see that sort of basic leaf shape. And looking at my go by, I see that there's still a little bit left to do. AP, and I can press the command key, and I can change this. And I can select the whole object. I can go briefly to my selection tool and turn it a little bit more until I get really pretty close to the shape that I want. AP, command key down, select the shapes, move it around until I get just pretty much exactly what I want. Okay, and I'm going to stop there and just call it good enough for now. All right, just so we don't make this movie go on forever. Okay, now I'll need a fill color here, so I'll select with my selection tool. It gives me these options up here, and I'll put in a kind of yellow-green background. No stroke. Okay, so you can see I'm kind of getting the start on that. Now later I'll convert that into a gradient. Okay, we also talked about putting the stem in here, and there's some really cool new functions that we can look at here. With the arc tool, remember the arc tool does shapes like that. If you go this way, it wants to go the opposite direction. Okay, so let me just undo that. If you hold the X key down as you draw with the arc tool, it'll make an arc that's almost perfect for our needs. Isn't that something? Just hold the X key down and the arc goes in the opposite direction. Okay, now I want to add some color to that stroke, and I'll fatten it up a bit. And we did this up here in this option. We changed it from a uniform stroke. I think we used this one to make it a non-uniform stroke. So now see how it's fatter on one end than it is on the other. You can continue to play that up by adding more stroke thickness. It's adding it to this end, but not necessarily to this end. If I deselect, you can see kind of how that works. All right, I'll select that again. Okay, black or white selection tool here. Use the width tool to add additional dimensions to that stroke. It's the width tool, and it looks like that little guy right there. Now watch what it does as I get a little bit closer here. You have to have the object selected, so you use a selection tool for that, but then with the width tool, if you look really closely, you can see how it adds these little controls. Now it'll add it at any anchor point, but you can add additional controls anywhere along the path. Be careful here, don't add too many. It can force you to have to start over. Let's see how the width tool works here. If I just click here and drag it up, you can see that it's making the line wider. Well, that's kind of what we need. You can bring it back down. So you can make lines skinnier as well. Add the Option key, and it will add width to just one side of the line, which is kind of nice. And actually, kind of what we need here is to make this sorry about my gravelly throat. We need to make it wider here and skinnier over here. So I'm using the width tool. Don't be confused. That's a width tool right there. I know it looks a lot like a selection tool. If I click and drag, I can add a new width control here. And as you see what I'm doing there, I'm just going to make it right about there. And that looks a lot like what we want according to the graphic that we have that we've pulled in over here. Okay, so that's looking quite a bit like it. All right, and you can also add width at the other end too, and I find that it's kind of necessary to do that. I'm going to just zoom in really close here. It's so skinny at the end that if I add my width tool here, I'll blunt the end, but it actually looks a little better with a little more stroke at this end. Now that blunt end that you see there can be fixed, and we'll make it look a little better as we go here. Okay, so now we've got the object for the main vein of the leaf. I just want to take that shape, and right now it's just a stroke. If we look at an outline view, you can see it's still just a stroke. We've got the shape sort of roughly where we need it, but it's just a stroke. And what I'd like to do is add the vein elements, those little added shapes that come in off of this. I'd like to add those so that this vein and all the other veins are all one shape. Remember, we kind of did a similar thing when we did the snowflakes earlier. So if you remember how to do that, we select it and go to Object, Path, and Outline Stroke. Now you may discover when you outline the stroke here that you end up with a lot of anchor points. You may not need that many anchor points. Look at all of them there. They're everywhere. Okay, there is a tool that will help you get rid of unnecessary anchor points. It's called the Smooth tool. It's located right under the pencil, and it works sort of by magic. You just kind of drag along there, and it eliminates. And you can see I don't even have to be real careful with it. It sort of knows what you want. I think you do have to cross the path that you're wanting to edit. Now it kind of over edited right here, so I'm just going to undo and maybe just do a little bit less of it on this end and right here, and you can see it looks a lot smoother now, and it is a outlined path instead of a single stroke. Now if it damaged anything down here that you wish it hadn't, that's all still editable. I can pull that in. Or another way is to just simply remove unnecessary anchor points using the pen minus. Remember, it's intuitive. It knows when you roll over an anchor point that your intent is to get rid of an unnecessary anchor point. You may find that you can edit some and that some of them it's really not maybe a great idea to edit. Take one out, press your Command key, and you can smooth the path back out if you want to do it that way. Okay, so I'm just getting a kind of a organic looking shape there, which is great. Looks just the way I wanted. Okay, I want to add those little extra veins that go on here. Let me take a look at what I need to do. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they actually start right about here. So I'm just going to come in here with my pen tool. Here's how I do it. Turn off your smart guides. They can be a bit of a hazard here. And let me just zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. I click inside the black there. Now, if you've got it filled with another color, just inside the area, click and click drag. Don't make this any more difficult than it needs to be. I've had students really try to make this hard. Then you come back and click on the top one more time. See how it breaks off that handle? And what that does is it gives you the capability of making a path that looks like this. Isn't that nice? And you can still work it with your arrows if you need to. Okay, now you can close that too if you want, but you need to click and then click. You don't have to close them. They work just as fine if they're open paths. So I'll make another one up here. Click. It's just that when you close them, you don't have to remember to deselect. Click and drag. Click. And come back down here. Click and drag. Okay, so it's click, click and drag to make the curve. Here I'll just deselect. Use an open path there. This one's closed, this one's open. We'll make one more. It's just simply click, then click and drag to get the curve. Don't forget to click a second time right here. Click, and then come right back down. Click and drag going down. It'll take a little while. Pen tool is one of the most difficult tools to master. Deselect. Okay, now let's look at that graphic over here and see how they're lined up. They're opposite each other. Okay, good. So, again, we'll do it with the pen tool. Just click. Go to the point where you want the last anchor point. Click and drag, or the next anchor point. Then don't forget to click a second time to reverse direction. And then come back down here and click and pull up. Just watch where the indicator line goes and you'll know what kind of shape you're going to end up with when you let go of the mouse. Deselect. I did that with the Command key, just clicking in the outside in the negative space. Click. I see that time I accidentally clicked right on the path of another object, so I'm going to deselect that. Remember that Shift Command A is the way to deselect. So I'm just going to make sure I don't do that again. I'll click right here. Actually did it again. So let me just try it in a different spot. I'll put it here. Click and drag. Click. Click and go up. Kind of up and to the right. Just watch where your blue path goes there, or your construction path, and you'll be able to see what you're doing in advance. Deselect. You can also use, I used Shift Command A that time. Okay. If you see the little cross mark there, see how there's a little slant line? That means you're going to click on the same point that you've already drawn. Move it until you see a kind of an asterisk, and then you'll know that you're starting a new shape. Click, click and drag, click, click and drag. Now see that one, it tried to tell me I was about to hit on the same one again. Let me just undo that. Gotta be careful. When you leave those open points, it sort of knows that that's not really what you want. So be careful. If you see that one, it means you're going to attach to something else. So click and drag. And then on the last click, if it looks too fat there, you can just use your arrow keys until you get it just right. Now, remember too here, you can reposition these after you've drawn them, so you don't have to draw them exactly where you want them to end up. After you're finished, then you can move them. And you can select any anchor point in the cluster there and move it individually. So I'll click here, I'll move this one down. I don't really try to draw it exactly where I want it. Now that one turned out, it worked pretty well. But even here, if I decide, there's something about this that I wish I had done differently, you can select the anchor point and I can make it a little narrower. See, everything is editable. Everything is totally editable. Let me just zoom out. I'm getting to about 15 minutes here on this movie, so let me go ahead and close this and we'll do another one.